There is a quiet weight that many people carry, a heaviness that does not announce itself, but slowly drains the light from within. That weight is shame. Shame convinces you that you are the wound instead of someone who is simply wounded. It whispers that your past defines you, that your mistakes make you unworthy, and that your struggles are proof that something is wrong with you. Shame is not loud. It is subtle. It seeps into your thoughts, reshapes your identity, and builds invisible walls around your heart. It keeps you from asking for help because it convinces you that you don't deserve any. It keeps you silent because it tells you your voice doesn't matter. But the truth is this shame is a lie. A lie that destroys your joy, your relationships, your confidence, and your connection with the one who created you. You were never meant to walk through life believing you are broken beyond repair. You were meant to rise, to heal. And the moment you step out of shame and into compassion, for yourself, for your story, for your humanity, you begin to reclaim the life that shame tried to steal. Liberation begins not when the world changes, but when your inner narrative changes. You are more than your past. You are more than your mistakes. And you are worthy of returning to the light. Shame disconnects you from your true identity and makes you believe you are your mistakes. It begins quietly, settling into the corners of your mind long before you even realize it has taken root. It turns a single moment of failure into a lifelong label. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, shame whispers, I am the mistake. That shift, subtle but powerful, changes the way you see yourself, the way you walk through the world, and the way you allow yourself to be loved. Shame does not focus on what you did, it focuses on who you are. And when you begin to internalize that voice, everything in your life becomes filtered through a lens of unworthiness. This is how shame begins its quiet destruction. It tells you that your past defines you, that your weaknesses are permanent, and that your flaws are evidence that you are fundamentally broken. It convinces you that if people truly saw you, your wounds, your regrets, your imperfections, they would turn away. And so you begin to hide. You shrink parts of yourself, silence your emotions, and build walls around your heart, all in an attempt to protect yourself from being judged or rejected. But in reality, shame isolates you, not because the world has abandoned you, but because you have abandoned yourself. When shame becomes part of your identity self, you stop believing you deserve goodness. You push away opportunities because you tell yourself you're not capable. You sabotage relationships because you're convinced you'll eventually hurt or be hurt. You hold back your voice because you feel unworthy of taking space. Every dream feels too big for someone like you. Every act of kindness feels undeserved. Every blessing feels like it belongs to someone better. Shame trains you to see only your flaws, ignoring the countless strengths, gifts, and moments of courage that make up your story. And the tragedy is that shame blinds you to your true self. The self that is capable of growth, transformation, purpose, and love. It convinces you that your identity is a prison built from your past, when in reality, your identity is a garden designed for renewal. But shame does not want renewal, it wants stagnation. It wants you stuck in the memory of a moment, trapped in a version of yourself that no longer exists. The more you listen to shame, the more disconnected you become from the truth that you are a human being who is learning, evolving, and trying to find your way. Shame also distorts your relationship with the divine. Instead of seeing your creator as merciful and forgiving, shame makes you believe you are beyond forgiveness. It makes you feel small, unworthy of turning back, unworthy of love, unworthy of grace. But these beliefs come from shame, not from truth. Every soul is created with dignity. Every heart is allowed to return. Every human has the right to begin again. Shame tries to erase these truths from your heart, convincing you that because you fell once, you are disqualified from rising. But no one is disqualified, not you. not your post self, not the version of you that made mistakes while trying to survive. What shame fears most is awareness. The moment you begin to recognize that shame is a voice, not your identity, you begin to reclaim your power. You start to question the story you've been telling yourself for years. You start to untangle who you are from what you've just done. You begin to understand that mistakes are experiences, not verdicts. They are events, not labels. They are chapters, not the entire book. And once this awareness grows, shame starts to lose its grip. Slowly, gently, you start to rediscover the parts of yourself that were buried beneath self-blame and fear. Healing from shame is not loud or dramatic. It is a quiet process of returning to yourself. It is choosing compassion over criticism, choosing growth over self-punishment, choosing truth over the distorted narratives of the past. It is remembering that you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be real. You were meant to learn, to rise, to fall, to rise again, and to become someone stronger, softer, and wiser through it all. Shame tells you that you are your mistakes, but healing reminds you that you are so much more. You are a story in progress, and no single page can define the whole book. Shame isolates you, convincing you to hide instead of seek healing and support. It wraps itself around your heart like a shadow, whispering that you are safer alone, safer behind closed doors, safer behind a mask that hides your pain. Shame thrives in secret, and it teaches you to disappear long before anyone has the chance to see the real you. It tells you that your wounds are too messy, your past too complicated, your emotions too heavy to be shared. And because you believe these lies, you retreat. Slowly at first, then completely, until isolation becomes your default way of surviving. At its core, shame makes you believe that your pain disqualifies you from connection. You begin to feel like an outsider in your own life, watching others laugh, grow, heal, and reach out while you stay stuck behind the walls you've built. You tell yourself that you don't want to burden anyone. You tell yourself that no one would understand. You tell yourself that you deserve to carry this alone. But these are not truths. They are the scars of shame, and they convince you that hiding is strength, when in reality, hiding is how you slowly break your own heart. Isolation becomes a habit. You pull back from people you care about. You stop answering messages. You avoid eye contact. You smile in conversations while your inner world is collapsing. You pretend to be okay because admitting you're not okay feels like failure. Shame convinces you that vulnerability is weakness, that asking for help is a sign of immaturity, and that emotional openness will only lead to rejection. So you silence your own needs. You swallow your tears. You numb your fears. And the longer you hide, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before shame took hold. But the isolation that shame creates is not just physical, it is emotional and spiritual. It disconnects you from others, but it also disconnects you from yourself. You lose sight of your own worth because you spend so much time believing you must shrink to be acceptable. You lose trust in your intuition because shame makes you doubt every part of yourself. You can even lose your spiritual grounding because shame whispers that someone like you, someone with mistakes, regrets, or weaknesses, is unworthy of turning back to the one who never stopped waiting. This emotional loneliness becomes a silent prison. Outwardly, you may look composed, but inwardly, you carry a deep ache for connection, compassion, and understanding. And yet, you continue to hide because shame convinces you that showing your true self will cause more pain than healing ever could. You fear that if people knew your struggles, they would turn away. You fear judgment, rejection, or being misunderstood. But beneath all those fears lies a deeper truth. You are tired of hiding, tired of carrying your pain alone, tired of pretending to be whole while your heart quietly cries for help. Shame does not want you to seek healing because healing threatens its existence. Healing requires honesty, openness, softness, These are things shame cannot survive. So shame teaches you to minimize your struggles, to dismiss your wound, to convince yourself that it's not worth reaching out. But the moment you begin to speak your truth, even in small ways, shame begins to unravel. It cannot survive in the light of connection. It cannot thrive when you choose vulnerability. It loses its power the moment you allow yourself to be seen. What you must remember is that connection is not a luxury. It is a lifeline. Healing rarely happens in isolation. Humans are wired for support, for compassion, for shared struggles and assurance. You are not meant to carry everything alone. When you reach out, you give others permission to reach back. When you speak your truth, you make space for others to speak theirs. When you seek support, you create room for healing to enter your life in ways you never imagined. The path out of shame is not easy, but it begins with one choice, the choice to stop hiding. The choice to believe that you are worthy of help, worthy of connection, and worthy of healing. The choice to trust that opening your heart, even a little, is not a weakness but an act of courage. Shame isolates you, but you do not have to stay isolated. You are allowed to return to the world. You are allowed to seek love, comfort, and support. You are allowed to heal. And you deserve to be seen, not as someone defined by shame, but as someone who is learning how to rise beyond it. It creates destructive inner narratives that limit growth, self-worth, and spiritual connection. Shame weaves these narratives almost imperceptibly until they become the background noise of your mind. They are the quiet stories you repeat to yourself every day. Stories that tell you you're not enough, not lovable, not capable, not deserving. At first, they sound like caution, humility, or self-awareness, but over time, they harden into beliefs that shape how you see yourself and what you allow yourself to become. These narratives begin to feel like truth, even though they were never truth to begin with. They were born from pain, not reality, from fear, not wisdom, from wounds, not clearance. Shame convinces you that your worth is conditional. It makes you believe you must earn your right to be loved, accepted, or even forgiven. Every mistake becomes proof of failure. Every setback becomes confirmation that you were never good enough. You stop seeing your potential and instead see only your shortcomings. You begin to doubt your abilities, your dreams, your place in the world. You start to think small, play small, choose small. Not because you lack strength, but because shame tells you that you do. And the more you repeat its script internally, the more it becomes your identity. You forget that your true self was once bold, hopeful, driven, and capable of greatness. These inner narratives don't only affect your growth, they affect your relationship with yourself. Shame teaches you to be your own harshest critic, punishing yourself for every flaw. It becomes difficult to show yourself kindness or compassion because shame insists that you don't deserve it. You replay your failures like a broken record. You minimize your achievements, telling yourself they don't count. You compare yourself to others and always find yourself lacking. This constant self-judgment erodes your confidence, leaving you feeling fragile even when you appear strong to the world. And when your self-worth becomes fragile, your relationships suffer too, not because you don't care, but because you're afraid. You fear disappointing others. You fear not being enough. You fear being truly seen because being seen also means being vulnerable. Shame creates a narrative that you must hide parts of yourself to be loved. So you overextend, people please, or withdraw entirely. You lose your ability to form authentic connections because shame convinces you that if anyone knew the real you, they would leave. When you believe that lie long enough, you begin rejecting yourself before anyone else ever could. But perhaps the deepest impact of these inner narratives is on your spiritual connection. Shame builds an invisible barrier between you and the divine. It tells you that your mistakes have separated you from mercy, that your flaws have made you unworthy of returning, that your heart is too stained to be accepted. This narrative is one of the greatest deceptions shame creates. It distorts your relationship with your Creator, making you believe that love, forgiveness, and compassion are for others, not for you. You might still pray with your lips, but shame makes it hard to pray with your heart. You may still seek guidance, but shame makes you feel afraid to be fully honest in your seeking. It creates distance, not because the divine withdrew from you, but because shame convinced you to withdraw from him. Yet, despite the power of these narratives, they are not unchangeable. They are not your destiny. They were not written in stew. They were written in moments of pain. And anything written in pain can be rewritten with truth. You can relearn how to speak to yourself with tenderness instead of criticism. You can unlearn the belief that you must earn your worth. You can remind yourself that growth is possible, forgiveness is possible, transformation is possible. You can build new narratives, ones rooted in compassion, in resilience, in divine mercy, in your inherent dignity. The journey begins the moment you recognize that the voice of shame is not the voice of truth. It is simply an echo of past wounds trying to define a future they do not deserve to define. When you begin to challenge the lies, even gently, the old narratives lose their authority. You slowly reclaim your self-worth. You open space for growth. You reconnect with the divine not through perfection, but through sincerity. And gradually, your inner world shifts from a place of self-doubt to a place of healing. Shame may create destructive narratives, but you have the power to rewrite them. You have the right to rise beyond them. You have the strength to reclaim your story. And your story, your real story, is far more beautiful than anything shame ever told you. Shame thrives in silence. Breaking that silence weakens its power. Shame survives only when it is hidden, when it festers behind the walls you build around your heart. It grows stronger in the places you refuse to look at, in the truths you are afraid to admit, in the wounds you keep buried deep beneath your exterior. Silence becomes the oxygen that keeps shame alive. The more you pretend everything is fine, the more tightly shame grips your thoughts, your emotions, and your identity. It convinces you that speaking your truth will destroy you, when in reality, silence is what is slowly destroying you from the inside. Shame knows that if you ever found the courage to voice your pain, its hold on you would begin to crumble. And so it keeps you quiet, fearful, and alone. For many people, silence feels like protection. You think that if you stay quiet, you can avoid judgment, rejection, or misunderstanding. You think that by burying your struggles, you can move past them without having to confront them. But silence does not bury shame. It strengthens it. Silence turns your pain into a secret that you must guard constantly. It forces you to live with two selves, the self the world sees and the self you hide. Over time, this split becomes exhausting. You begin to lose sight of who you truly are because you are always filtering your life through fear and self. You keep your emotions contained, your experiences unspoken, your tears unseen. But what is hidden cannot heal. What is silenced cannot transform. There is a reason shame fears your voice so much. The moment you speak, even a whisper of truth, shame's illusion begins to fade. When your pain is expressed, it becomes something you can face rather than something that controls you. When you open up to someone you trust, you start to realize that your struggles are not signs of defect, but signs of humanity. You begin to see that others, too, have carried wounds, have made mistakes, have felt unworthy, and have battled inner shadows. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the doorway through which healing enters. But shame cannot survive where vulnerability lives. It cannot remain powerful in a heart that chooses honesty over silence. Breaking the silence is not always dramatic. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a journal entry, a prayer, a single conversation, or a moment of honesty with yourself. It begins with acknowledging what you feel instead of denying it. It begins with letting yourself be seen, not perfectly, but authentically. The more you speak your truth, the more you reclaim ownership of your story. What once felt suffocating becomes breathable. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. The chains you thought were permanent begin to loosen because the power of shame was never in the truth itself, but in the secrecy surrounding it. And breaking the silence does something even more profound. It reconnects you with others. Shame tells you that you are alone, that no one will understand, that your experiences make you different from everyone else. But when you share your struggle, you begin to realize that other hearts have walked similar paths. People may surprise you with their empathy, their compassion, and their ability to hold space for your pain. Even if no one has the perfect words, the simple act of being witnessed, being heard, being seen without judgment begins to restore the pieces of you that shame tried to break. The silence shame demands also affects your spiritual life. When you hide your deepest wounds, you feel disconnected not only from people, but also from the one who created you. You feel too ashamed to turn back, too flawed to seek mercy, too broken to ask for healing. But you were never meant to conceal your pain from the one who already knows it. The moment you break your spiritual silence, even a quiet, help me, even a simple sigh of the heart, you reopen the path to divine comfort. Shame says hide, mercy says return. Shame says you are too stained, forgiveness says you are never beyond hope. But as long as you remain silent, it is shame's voice that dominates your inner world. Breaking that silence is not easy. It takes courage. It takes courage. It takes the willingness to let go of the fear of being misunderstood. But the moment you choose to speak, even imperfectly, shame loses a part of its authority over you. Each word becomes a step toward freedom. Each moment of honesty becomes a crack in the armor shame built around your heart. And eventually, you discover something powerful. Your truth, spoken aloud, does not destroy you. It heals you. It frees you. It allows you to step out of the shadows and into a life where you no longer have to hide, because you have learned that the parts of you were most afraid to reveal were the very parts that needed love the most. Self-compassion is a powerful antidote to the lies shame whispers. Shame tells you that you must earn your worth, hide your flaws, and punish yourself for every mistake. It convinces you that harshness will make you stronger, that self-criticism will push you to improve, and that withholding kindness from yourself is a form of discipline. But this is the great deception of shame. It teaches you that cruelty is the path to growth, when in reality, cruelty only deepens your wounds. Self-compassion, on the other hand, softens the mind and heart in a way that allows healing, clarity, and true transformation to take place. It reminds you that perfection has never been the requirement for being worthy of love, understanding, or forgiveness. It teaches you to speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you care about, gently and patiently, especially in moments of struggle. When you practice self-compassion, you interrupt the destructive inner narratives that shame depends on. Instead of repeating the same harsh stories, I'm not enough, I always fail, I don't deserve goodness, you create space for a kinder truth. Self-compassion does not deny your mistakes. It helps you face them without collapsing under their weight. It acknowledges your humanity. It recognizes that growth involves stumbling, learning, and rising again. Through compassion, you begin to see failures not as proof of your inadequacy, but as inevitable steps in your journey. You stop viewing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as becoming. Self-compassion also challenges the deep fear that you must be flawless to be lovable. Shame constantly whispers that love is conditional, that you are only worthy when you meet certain expectations, others' expectations, society's expectations, or even your own unrealistic expectations. But compassion reminds you that love is rooted in sincerity, not perfection. It reminds you that the people who truly care for you don't need you to be flawless, they need you to be real. And when you allow yourself to be real, with your imperfections, emotions, and vulnerabilities, you open the door to deeper connection, both with yourself and with others. One of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion is its ability to soften the inner critic that shame amplifies. Shame makes the voice inside your head sharp, harsh, and relentless. It tells you that you must be better, faster, stronger, quieter, or more perfect. But self-compassion transforms that voice into one that encourages instead of condemns. It helps you speak to yourself with the same understanding you would offer a friend who is hurting. It asks you to pause, to breathe, to acknowledge your pain, not with judgment, but with care. This gentle approach doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. It gives you the emotional safety needed to grow without fear of your own self-attacks. Self-compassion also rebuilds your sense of worth. Shame makes you feel like you must constantly prove your value, constantly be productive, constantly meet standards just to justify your existence. It turns life into a performance. But compassion guides you back to the truth that your worth is intrinsic, not earned. You were created with dignity. You were born with value. Nothing you have done and nothing you will do can strip you of that fundamental worth. When you internalize this truth, your entire relationship with yourself begins to shift. You stop fighting yourself. You stop diminishing yourself. You stop apologizing for simply being human. Perhaps the most transformative impact of self-compassion is the way it restores your spiritual connection. Shame distances you from the divine by convincing you that your mistakes make you unworthy of returning. It tells you that forgiveness is for others, not for you. But compassion opens the heart to the reality of divine mercy. It reminds you that you are seen fully, your struggles, your fears, your intentions, and still held with love. Compassion allows you to approach the divine not from a place of fear, but from a place of humility and hope. It teaches you that you are never too far gone, never too damaged, never too flawed to seek guidance, healing, or forgiveness. Self-compassion does not eliminate all struggle, but it changes how you walk through it. Instead of battling yourself, you begin supporting yourself. Instead of punishing your heart, you begin tending to it. Instead of burying your emotions in silence, you acknowledge them with gentleness. And slowly, the grip of shame weakens. The lies shame whispered lose their force. You realize that healing was always possible, not because you became perfect, but because you finally allowed yourself to be human. In that humanity, compassion becomes not just a practice, but a lifeline, one that guides you back to yourself every time shame tries to pull you away. Healing begins when you separate your worth from your wounds and allow yourself to rise again. As long as you believe that your pain defines you, you will continue to live beneath the weight of a story that was never meant to be your identity. Wounds are experiences, moments in time, chapters in a long and unfolding journey. But shame convinces you that they are the entire book. It tells you that your heartbreak, your failures, your losses, or your regrets are proof that you are not worthy of love, peace, or a new beginning. But healing begins the moment you recognize that your wounds are not who you are. They may shape you, but they do not limit you. They may hurt you, but they do not determine your destiny. You are more than the moments that broke you. You are the soul that survived them. Many people remain stuck in their pain because they internalize it, carrying their wounds like a label they can never remove. If you were abandoned, you begin to believe you are unlovable. If you failed, you begin to believe you are incapable. If you were hurt, you begin to believe you deserved it. If someone betrayed you, you begin to believe you cannot trust. These beliefs become chains that keep you tied to what happened rather than what is possible. But the truth possible Experiences do not define identity. Pain does not diminish worth. The things you went through may explain your fears, your hesitation, your scars, but they do not explain who you are at your core. Healing begins with the gentle act of reclaiming yourself from the stories pain has written for you. Separating your worth from your wounds means recognizing that your value remains intact even when your heart feels. A broken heart is still a heart worthy of love. A tired soul is still a soul worthy of rest. A person who has made mistakes is still a person capable of growth. Worth is not earned, it is inherent. It exists because you exist. And when you finally begin to see yourself through the lens of compassion rather than judgment, you start to realize that your wounds were never a measure of your value. They were simply signs that you lived, that you cared, that you were human. Healing also requires courage, the courage to look at your wounds without letting them define you. Some people avoid healing because they think it means reliving their pain. But healing is not about reopening wounds. It is about freeing yourself from them. It is about understanding your past without being imprisoned by it. It is about acknowledging what happened without allowing it to dictate who you become. When you face your pain with compassion instead of fear, you give yourself the opportunity to release it. And in that release, there is space for something new. New strength, new clarity, new beginnings. Allowing yourself to rise again is one of the most profound acts of self-love you can offer your soul. It means giving yourself permission to grow beyond what hurt you. It means letting go of the narrative that says you must stay broken because you were once broken. It means choosing hope at a time when despair feels more familiar. Rising, again, is not about pretending the pain never happened. It is about refusing to let the pain be the final chapter. It is standing up even when you feel weak, moving forward even when you are afraid, and believing in healing even when you do not yet feel healed. The process of rising is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible. It might begin with forgiving yourself for something you've carried too long. It might begin with reaching out for help. It might begin with a small act of courage, like speaking your truth or setting a boundary. It might begin with choosing rest instead of self-punishment. Every small act of compassion toward yourself is a step toward raising. And each step matters because each step carries you closer to the life that your wounds tried to steal from you. Healing is not linear. There will be days when you feel strong and days when you feel broken again. But even on the hard days, you are still healing. You are still growing. You are still learning how to rise. What matters is not how fast you move, but that you keep choosing yourself again and again with gentleness and patience. When you separate your worth from your wounds, you reclaim the power to shape your own. You remind yourself that you are not defined by what hurt you, but by how you choose to transform. And in that transmute, you rise, not back to who you used to be, but toward who you were always meant to become.